Greetings, this is Colin, and welcome to Meet Me at the Table. Today we're going to be doing a playthrough of Apollo, a game inspired by NASA moon missions. Currently this game is only available at Target and it was $30, so it's not too expensive. It's a game where you have one person playing the mission control, everyone else is playing as astronauts, and you're working together to try and fly all the way to the moon, land there, and then come back home safely. It's pretty interesting. It's got a real-time element, and there's hidden information, so you cannot play this solo. So during this playthrough, we'll have Monica and Bernd as well joining me. So in this video, we're going to go ahead and set this game up, and then in our next video, we'll have our playthrough. The game comes with two missions. You have a starter mission, the Gemini mission. That one is just going around the Earth and then coming back home, so it's much shorter, and it's a starter mission, so everything's a little bit easier. We're going to play today the full mission, the Apollo mission. This one we're going to actually go to the moon, land on the moon, and then come back and have to land on Earth safely. So this is the one that we're going to set up. The game comes with both of these in the box, and I definitely highly recommend starting with Gemini, but I do feel like the real game starts when you play the Apollo mission. Let's start by setting up the mission controls area, then we'll end by setting up the astronauts area. And in our game, Monica will be playing as the mission control, and Bernd and I will be the astronauts. First, you want to grab the control board, and these are all the different types of systems that you have on your ship. So we have flight control, life support, experiments, power distribution, and communications. You're going to start each one at the level 8, and just so you know, how you get these in is you'll actually have to turn them, you put them in sideways, flip them like so, and then slide them in. And I have found that you have to take those off when you try and pack this away in the box to make everything fit. Throughout the game, each of these different types of systems will be taking damage. Each one will have different detriments if they get all the way down, or they might have benefits at the top that you won't get if they're farther down on the track. If you have a crisis, you're going to have to draw a crisis card specific to that system. Next, what I like to do is set up my crisis cards. You're going to have 5 crisis cards for each of the different systems. You also have your experiment cards. Now, this is not the first experiment we're going to play with because I can't know what it is as an astronaut, so I'm just going to show you. But when you are mission control, Monica will shuffle this up and take one of them and place it here. And this is going to be the first experiment that we're going to try and solve for. Since we're playing the Apollo mission, we have to complete 3 experiments. So you're going to take this experiment tracker and place it on the 0. And then every time the astronauts successfully place a black 6 in the experiment slot, you can move this up, and when it's completed, then you get to flip it over and read the backside and gain whatever benefit it is. Now let's talk quickly about each of these stations. For flight control, there's no benefit for being at the highest level here, but if you are at 3 or lower, then your astronauts cannot complete a flight stage. And if they cannot complete a flight stage, that's really bad, because that's how you progress in the game. If you can't complete a flight stage in time, you actually lose the game. Life support lets the astronauts know how many dice they get to roll during the roll phase. So us, Bernd and I, will ask Monica at the beginning of each round and ask how many dice we get to roll. The more damage we have, the less dice we have. This game is, in essence, a dice placement game, so you want more dice. You always want more dice. So you'll start at 10, the farther down you go all the way down to 5. Experiments, what's great about this one, if you're higher up on the track, you can, if, for an example, let's say we give a black 5 instead of a black 6, if she's up at the top part of her experiments track, she can adjust 2 dice with a +1, -1. And actually what I do, and what you'll see in the playthrough, is I had Monica and I gave her 2 of these +- tokens, so she can have these, and once per round, or twice per round if it's up here, she can use those if we end up giving dice of a different number. But if this is farther down this track, then we won't get that benefit. And you can see if we're at a 6 or a 5, we get 1. She can adjust 1 die +or -1. So I will have these. This is not denoted in the rules, but it's something that practically seems to make the most sense to track if you've used that during the round. Power distribution up here, there's an action that the astronauts can take where they can allow Monica as the mission control to adjust these dials. She can reduce 1 by 1 to increase another 1 by 1. This one, she can do that just fine unless she's at 3 or lower. She actually gets -1 adjustment if she gets down to there. And then finally, communications. In this game, since communications are limited, if we ever get down to 3 or lower, comms are down and she cannot communicate anything to us. And so then we'll have to repair it to get above that 3. So that's how these work. Last thing I do want to point out is you want to make sure that you're at the 8 spot on all of these systems prior to starting the game. Next, you want to grab all these comm tokens. There's tons of them. A lot of them have the same thing on both sides, but some of them, like this one, actually has a different side. And Monica can use them either as a comm token, which is just simply to say something to us, telling us maybe about the board or about what we need for our experiment, or she can use the backside for whatever it is. So this one says any color die. That means that, let's say we gave her a yellow 6 for the experiment, she could actually use this to count it as an experiment, even though it's the wrong color. There's other ones like this one, +1 to any system, but then you can see this one, it says comms on both sides. So what you need to do is you need to grab 2 of the ones that say comms on both sides, and you get to start with those. The rest of them, make sure that they're flipped upside down so you can only see comms, and you'll have a pile that she'll be grabbing at during the game when we provide her more comm tokens. Next, she'll want to grab 1 black and 1 yellow die. You will be using these to solve puzzles during the action phase if ever we have a crisis that tells us we need to do that. Next, you want to grab the player screen, and this is what the mission control will use, and will place their mission control board down here so that us as astronauts can't see it, because we're not allowed to see that. Because think of it as the astronauts are actually flying out in outer space, they wouldn't be able to see all that information that mission control could see. On here also, it states all the different things that the mission control can communicate with one of those comm tokens. So what you can communicate are the color of the dice needed to complete an experiment. You can give the total number of dice needed to complete an experiment. You can give the number value of each die needed to complete an experiment. And then you can also give a level and a system that it's currently at. So for an example they have here, flight be advised your life support is at level 2. You can also say what system is in crisis. You can't tell them what the crisis is unless you use a comm token to tell them. And then finally, you can also tell them if a system is in crisis that needs to be addressed. And then over here on this side, it also provides you with all the detail of those different sided comm tokens. Next, you want to grab these 3 alert tokens and this comms down token. And what you do throughout the game, you can decide how you want to use these, but you can flip these up to simply provide an alert to the astronauts. The thing is they're not going to know what it means. You can't do that during the roll phase. You can only do that during the action real-time phase. You can flip those up and notate, hey, there's a system that we have an issue. It's close to crisis, but the astronauts are not going to know what it is. They might be able to guess what it is, but they're not going to know. Also, when the communications go down, so you can't even use comm tokens, you need to flip this up so that way your astronauts know that and they can repair it, so they don't think that you're just not talking to them for no reason. During our playthrough, because it's a challenge to get this on screen, we're actually going to have these on the table and Monica's going to slide them over next to us. You'll see how it works. You'll still be able to see them on camera. It's just instead of being on top of here, the player screen, it's going to be on the table. Our next step in setup is you're going to want to grab your crisis puzzle boards. Some of the crisis cards are going to tell us that the mission control has to solve a puzzle, and what they need to do only during the action phase. And while they're doing this, the astronauts can take no actions. So yes, it's preventing the astronauts from getting anything done. They have to wait until mission control can complete this. And what they have to do is they have to roll these 2 dice, plus any dice that the astronauts are willing to give up and give to them to use. They're going to roll them over and over again and try and get the numbers on these puzzle pieces. Then what they have to do with these puzzle pieces is you have to connect them from yellow to yellow. I'm terrible doing this right now. Without going on the outside of the board or hitting these red spots. There we go. This is the exact reason why I have Monica being mission control, not me. You can see here I have a continuous connection from yellow to yellow, and there's no edges here, or it's coming off of the board or blocking any of the red spots. So she's going to have to do that in real time, rolling these over. Oh, so I got 2 6s. I could see if any of these have 2 6s. If I do, I've gained that puzzle piece. And you'll see that in the playthrough most likely, because usually systems go into crisis. And so what we'll do at the beginning of the game is we'll take these 4 puzzle boards, shuffle them up, and have them face down next to her play area. We'll also have all of these tokens out by her so that if she has to do that, she can quickly reference them. And you can see some of them even have 3 numbers. So that means we as astronauts have to give her 1 die, because she'll never be able to roll a 6 and 2 5s with only 2 dice. Finally, we will set up our board here. This is the board and how we're going to move across the outer space areas, go to the moon, and then go ahead and come back to the Earth. And you can see these different stages. You also want to set up your stage cards, making sure that the side that's showing is not the picture side. It's going to be the side that has dice placement areas. And then the astronauts will have to place their dice here and try and complete these stages. And you need to complete them before you pass that specific stage. So for an example, if I was here and I had not completed stage 2 and I did an action and I went to here, then we lost the mission. So we need to make sure that we complete these stages prior to when we move off of that stage area on the board itself. Now, normally what they recommend is you take these and you lay them out above or below the board, and then that way you go and you complete them one at a time. But because we're recording this and we have limited space when you're recording, we're actually going to pile them on top of one another like so. And then as we complete them, we'll be able to see the next ones and you'll see the pictures and so on and so forth. Also, please note, normally you should use these standees. They've got one specific to the Apollo mission and one to the Gemini mission, but we found it was kind of hard to see on camera. So what we're going to use is this gold die. That's going to be our tracker. And every time the astronauts do an action, which is whenever they place dice as an action, so if they decide to place them out in a specific spot, that's one action. This is going to get moved up one space. Normally when you play this, the mission control needs to track all the actions on the board. It kind of helps them stay involved. It also helps just make sure that the astronauts don't have to worry about doing that while doing the actions during real time. But once again, because of recording, you're going to see that Barrett and I actually do the action movement just because Monica can't reach based on how we had to set up the board so that we didn't see her mission control stuff. So once again, that won't be an issue when you play off camera. But yeah, you'll see that's a little bit different during our playthrough. As you can see, most of the setup is with the mission control. Astronauts, this is all we need to do. We're going to grab this flight control board here. It has all these different actions that we can take. We can repair all the different systems. So repair flight control, repair the power distribution, repair life support, repair experiments, and repair communications. We then can do that power distribution action where we can use black dice only, and depending upon what number is on the die, we can spend that action, so we're going to move one space on the board, but then we can provide mission control with adjustments, and the adjustments is where she can tick down one of the systems to tick it up, maybe if one system is about to go in crisis. Over here, we can only use yellow dice, and depending on which die we give up, we can get 1, 2, or 3 of these plus or minus tokens. And these tokens can be used to affect the dice that we decide to place out on the board. You can never go from 1 to a 6 or 6 to a 1, but I could change a 1 to a 2 with this plus, or I could change a 2 down to a 1 with the minus. Over here is where we're going to send our dice for trying to complete experiments. Remember, we're not going to know what needs to be done for the experiments. We're going to have to either guess or we'll have mission control tell us about it. And so when we place our dice here, we'll just notify the mission control and also take that action on the board. And then finally over here, our communications, we can spend only odd numbered dice, and depending on which numbered die we use, let's say if we use a 5, we can give 5 comm tokens to Monica or mission control so that then she can tell us more information. Don't forget, we're also going to be trying to complete our stages, and so we're also going to be putting dice onto our stage cards to complete them so we can continue moving from Earth all the way to the moon and then back to Earth. Up here we have our 10 action dice. Each round we'll have to ask mission control how many we actually get to roll, because once again, if our life support's going down, we might only be able to roll 5. And if we can only roll 5, we have to choose which colors on our own before we roll. And that is not in real time. We'll roll, and then what we'll actually do is place them on our damage track here. And anywhere where we don't block X's, that's where we're going to do damage to the actual those specific spots. So if, let's say, I had 2 dice here on flight control, then we would be telling flight control that we're doing 1 point of damage to it. Just to show you an example, here on flight control will be taking 2 damage, power distribution would be taking 2 damage, life support would be taking no damage, and we have 2 over here in the bonus plus or minus tokens. So because of that, we would gain 2 of these tokens that we could use during the action phase. Experiments would take 3 damage, and communications would take 1. But we have this 6 here. Well, 6s are wild. We can then put them anywhere we want to prevent that damage. So let's say we decide to put it here. So when we would tell mission control, experiments takes only 2 damage instead of 3. After we do this, then we move to that action phase, which is 4 minutes, and then what we need to do is we can use our dice and place them in all the different spots on this board, as well as potentially on the actual stage cards. You have 5 astronauts here that you can use to help you remember, oh wait, flight control took a lot of damage, so I'm going to notate that so I remember during the action phase we need to repair that. Or hey, look at communications needs it. So you can use them kind of how you want. That's how they recommend. Also, we have a turn order token, so whenever you're playing with more than 2 players, you're going to have all the players except for one doing the mission control. All the other ones are going to be astronauts. And what you're supposed to do is each of you will take one action and then pass the turn token back and forth. You're going to see in our playthrough, Barrett and I don't really do that. We probably should have, but we're basically just cooperatively placing stuff, and a lot of that has to do with there's a camera in the way. But so when you're playing, I don't think you need to use this, but this is really helpful if you're worried about someone as an astronaut taking over. This will ensure everyone gets an action, which is really nice, but you don't need to play with that, I would say. And that, my friends, is the setup of Apollo, a game inspired by NASA moon missions. I can't wait to show you guys the playthrough. Barrett, Monica, and I had a blast. Hope you guys enjoy it, and I will see you in the playthrough.